Hello everyone, I hope you all are having a wonderful day. Today we are posing the question of, could Jodi Sue actually be a practicing witch? Well, we first have to determine whether there are any practicing witches in that area, because you see, to become a witch, you have to practice under a witch for a year. But before we do that, we're going to go and see where witches actually came from, or in this area, what the history is. This is Appalachian Witchery, how modern witchcraft is practiced. Some may be offended by being called a witch, but Ian Allen certainly isn't. As a modern day witchcraft practitioner, Allen doesn't shy away from the title, especially considering its origins come from wiki, meaning a wise person. Allen shares his knowledge through Appalachian Witchery, a small business he founded that provides educational workshops about witchcraft's history and its current day practices. During those classes, Allen debunks common myths, mostly manifested through Hollywood, about conventional witchcraft. With Halloween just around the corner, Allen said his business garners a bit more attention this time of year. Just this weekend alone, Allen is traveling to Raleigh, North Carolina to conduct classes on the introductions to Appalachian witchery and magic and Appalachian divination techniques. The introduction class is based on the Appalachian settlers and some of their particular beliefs carried over from England, Ireland, Scotland, and Germany. It focuses on the folklore and the folk magic practices that the original settlers brought with them and how it evolved throughout the decades and into modern times. We also look at some herbal remedies and things like that, Allen said. While not as eccentric as blood sacrifices and devil worshipping, Allen explains settlers of Appalachia did share bizarre remedies to common problems and predicaments. Some examples include a woman seeking relief from menstrual cramps could try to avoid them altogether if she offers beets outside a graveyard to the guardian of the cemetery the day after her last cycle ends. A person hoping to rid themselves of warts could steal a neighbor's dish rag, wipe it over their warts, and bury it in the woods off their property. As the rag rotted, so would the warts. A sin eater, wearing a dark cloak and hood, would be summoned upon the death of a loved one to eat a meal placed upon the corpse, absolving the deceased of all of their worldly sins and providing them passage into heaven. There was a large German influence in the practice, some blending with the Cherokee belief structure. Allen said, we also had interchanges with slaves as they were moving through the state of Franklin, especially here within the Johnson City and Tri-City areas. They would share some of their practices from the Deep South, such as using chicken feet as lucky charms. Allen said the ideas of fairies, pixies, and the knocker certainly influenced the development of our urban legends, such as the wood booger and the wampus cat. Although many settlers practiced what is now categorized as witchcraft, many did not define it in such a way. They didn't see it in opposition to their faith. They would believe these remedies or practices were handed down to them from the Christian God. The ability to interpret dreams, read fortunes through playing cards or tea leaves, Allen said. You would have people doing things in the mountains, what we now would definitely term witchcraft, especially the divination as far as fortune telling. Allen said many Appalachian psychics used regular playing cards to read fortunes, since tarot cards were tough to come by back then. Within the witchcraft belief structure, Allen said the concept of the Christian devil doesn't even exist, although it does incorporate plenty of physical world deities, such as Mother Nature and Father Winter. Growing up in Wise County, Virginia, Allen was raised in a Christian household but grew intrigued by stories told by his grandmother and great aunts. As a teenager, Allen became enamored with the witchcraft following a trip to Salem, Massachusetts, where he met Lori Cabot, who was named the official witch of Salem in the 1970s by Governor Michael Dukakis. As he grew older, Allen eventually traveled back to Salem and became a student of Cabot. Learning the science of witchcraft, he is now considered a Cabot witch in the Cabot-Kent tradition of witchcraft. In addition to educating, Allen said he is often called to to perform in-home exorcisms, spiritual cleansings, negative energy clearings, and psychic readings. On November 19th and November 20th, Alan will be teaching his Appalachian Spirit Work class and introductory class at the Spiritual Awakening Community Center at 802 Buffalo Street in Johnson City. Now, that's sort of how it has developed over the years, but you still ask, could there be witches in Hawkins County? Well, over the years, there has been two well-known stories about Rogersville. Okay, it says, near the little village of Churchill in Hawkins County, Tennessee, stood a grist mill owned and operated by Mr. Rice. Rice's mill had ground corn and made meal for the area for many years and had been passed down through the generation. When I was 15, Daddy had lost his job and worked at Eastman and couldn't find good work because he had a withered arm. We were left awful poor. I determined that I would have to go off and try and find work as it was summer and school was out, and my younger brother could chop wood and help keep the place up while I was gone. Before I set out, Daddy gave me his pocket knife. Says, now David, you take this. It's got regular blades and it's got a little fork, and it's got this here silver blade that's for skinning and cutting up meat and cooking and all such stuff as that. And I lit out on down the road. Anyways, says I went on and it commenced getting dark, and I finally came upon Rice's mill as the mill stood away down the road from where we lived, nearly down to Surgeonsville. I never had been to the mill, and only time Daddy went was when he needed to turn some cornmeal, which was only a few times a year. The store owner I talked to about a job of work told me that he had heard that Mr. Rice couldn't seem to keep a helper very long, and I might try down there. So he goes down there and he meets with Mr. Rice. Anyways, this is what's said. It says, he said he sure could use me help if I wasn't afraid to take the job, because the last 3 fellas he had hired run the mill for him had each been killed during their first night staying at the mill, and it looked like each one might have been poisoned somehow. Said if I could overcome all that hex and make a go of running the mill, that he would make me half owner, as he was too old to run it anymore and had no more family to leave it to. Well, the thing about it was, he said, anyways, the boys started cooking him something to eat that night, and he said, as I was stirring around, I accidentally knocked over a rag off in the floor, and instead of a cat's paw falling out fell this hand, a right hand, a woman's right hand, wrinkled, long fingernails, wearing a ring, bloody. Without touching it, I took a stick and put the hand in an old flour sack, turned the flume water away from the wheel, and switched the driving gear out. Left the mill idling and set out to old Mr. Rice's house with the sack. Got up there, showed Mr. Rice the right hand, and told him all had happened by my fire and how I chopped off that old black cat's paw, and about that chopped off cat's paw turning into an old woman's hand. Mr. Rice took one look at the hand and said, well, I be dad. This is just about what I'd been suspecting. David, my old woman is still in bed, won't get up, says she's feeling poorly. Wanted me to send for these 11 women from around the area to come and be with her, and I've got them all coming here. You come on in the bedroom with me. I think we can get to the bottom of all this. Went in and said, old woman, this here's David, and he's going to be running the mill. About then, all them other 11 women came in and gathered around the bed. She stayed all under the covers. They all acted real concerned and nervous. Mr. Rice said, old woman, stick out your right hand. I want to see it. She scrounged all around, stuck out a hand, but it was her left hand. He said, I told you to stick out your right hand. She wrinkled all around under the cover, shifting around, then stuck out the left hand again. Mr. Rice shouted, I told you your right hand, and with that, he grabbed the covers off her, grabbed up her right arm, and it was all bloody at the wrist, and her right hand had been cut off. Before any of them could move, Mr. Rice grabbed me, pulled me out the door, locked the door tight on his old lady and them 11 others, and threw coal oil on the house and set it afire with those 12 hags inside, and you never heard such meowing and screeching. You guys really need to go read this because it's really interesting. It's called Me and Rice's Mill, Some Cats. And then there's Times a Changing. Here's a couple of excerpts out of it. It says, embarrassment. It was also the year that Carl Walters, a 40-year-old resident of Carter's Valley, Rogersville, Tennessee, walked into the local store where Alberta Gibbons and her mother, Alta Wood, were drinking pop and shouted at them. This has gone far enough. He drew a pistol and shot Alberta dead as she held her baby in her arms. Alta pleaded, "Please don't kill me." But Walters put 3 bullets in her anyway. He then got into his car, drove to Kingsport, some 20 miles away, went to the police station and reported matter-of-factly, "I have just shot 2 women down in Hawkins County. I was tired of being bewitched." So there's 2 more. Okay. And then we have the famous story of the witch's grave. And this is Rogersville. It says, located in Rogersville, Tennessee, on the land of ebbing and flowing springs. Local legend. This is the grave of a local witch from the time of the origins of the town. After she was buried here, the cemetery ran out of room to bury people, so they decided to put more bodies into the site of this grave, her grave. This infuriated the witch. It is said that when anyone would read her headstone, it would summon her angry spirit, and in protest to those who disturbed her grave, their descendants, her angry spirit would come from behind the church located beside her grave and come towards whoever was reading her tombstone, placing a curse upon the head of the person who dares to disturb her spirit again. All the rage from being awoken and the fact that her grave is shared with strangers laid upon her corpse gives the readers some really bad juju. Bad luck. So there really are witches located in Rogersville, Tennessee. Is there any local covens up there? I'm not sure. Is Jodi a real witch? Well, stick around for my next video, because then we're going to delve into how you become a witch, and let's see if she really is. Don't forget to pray for yourself, pray for the kids, pray for each other.